Well, just on President Trump, amongst many other things that commend Trump for re-election, he launched at the end of last week a scathing attack on what he called decades of left-wing indoctrination in schools that has taught Americans to be ashamed of their country. It was a significant statement about America's culture wars. He linked the recent violence in US cities to an education system, he said, that has taught hatred rather than patriotism. As Trump told a conference on US history at the Washington National Archives last Thursday, and I quote, "The left-wing rioting and mayhem are the direct result of decades of left-wing indoctrination in our schools," unquote. He said US schools and universities were teaching, and I quote, "critical race theory, which taught young Americans that the US was a wicked and racist nation of which they should be ashamed." Said President Trump, and I quote, "The left is attempting to divide Americans by race in the service of political power." He said, quote, "By viewing every issue through the lens of race, they want to impose a new segregation, and we must not allow this to happen," unquote. Good on him. Says President Trump, "The crusade against American history is toxic propaganda, ideological poison that, if not removed, will dissolve the civic bonds which tie us together." He said it will destroy our country. Said Donald Trump, "Whether it's the mob on the street or the cancel culture in the boardroom, the goal is the same: to silence dissent, to scare you out of speaking the truth, and to bully Americans into abandoning their values, their heritage, and their very way of life." Now, as you know, you've seen these pictures on the television of the violent protests in Portland and Chicago and New York and Louisville in recent months, which involved left-wing anarchist groups such as the Antifa. That's an anti-fascist left-wing political movement in the United States. Antifa, anti-fascist. And they aim to achieve their objectives through the use of non-violent and violent direct action rather than through policy reform. This is outstanding stuff by President Trump. He's blamed Democrat mayors for failing to stamp out the violence, and he lays the blame at the education system, which he said did not share American values. This is true in our country. Said President Trump, "There is no more powerful force than a parent's love for their children. And patriotic mums and dads are going to demand that their children are no longer fed hateful lies about this country." He said American parents are not going to accept indoctrination in our schools, cancel culture at work, or the repression of traditional faith, culture and values in the public square. Said Donald Trump, "Not anymore." And Donald Trump said he would form, quote, "a national commission to promote patriotic education," unquote. He said which would encourage a curriculum that would teach students to, quote, "love America with all their heart and soul." Mr. Trump has sought to portray his opponent Biden as weak on law and order and challenged him to condemn by name left-wing groups such as Antifa. Said Donald Trump, going on with the case and not begging any pardons, and I quote, "Students in our universities are inundated with critical race theory. This is a Marxist doctrine holding that America is a wicked and racist nation, and even young children are complicit in oppression, and that our entire society must be radically reformed." He said, "Critical race theory is being forced into our children's schools, it's being imposed into workplace training, and it's being deployed to rip apart friends, neighbours and families." He said, "Teaching this horrible doctrine to our children is a form of child abuse in the truest sense of those words." Donald Trump, do we have a political leader here, anywhere, with a similar willingness to take on the education system? What are your views? Alan at skynews.com.au and the text line 0414 000 848.